Welcome to All Electric Conversations, where we talk with pioneers in traveling with electric vehicles. We're your hosts, Katie and Steve Krivolovic of the All Electric family. From road trips and towing to daily life, we'll hear stories of wanderlust and progress to inspire your own adventures with All Electric Conversations. Welcome to another All Electric Conversations podcast. I'm Katie.
I'm Steve.
And we're from the All Electric family.
Yeah, we like to hop on these podcasts and just talk either about current events, what's going on in our life, or even just the state of electric vehicles. We've also talked about, basically electric vehicles. And so today we're going to talk about, are big batteried vehicles necessary?
Yes. Are they worth it? Should they be made? Is it a thing? So we're going to dive into that and talk about some of those big battery vehicles. So we're talking like Hummer EVs, Lightnings, even the Rivians are a pretty big battery vehicle. So are they worth it?
Yeah, we should come up with some names like Big Battery and then the Hummer EV, like the Make It
Jumbo battery.
Battery.
Yeah.
So when we're talking big batteries, we're talking, over that 100 kilowatt.
Yeah.
Or your Model S, your Model X. Those are roughly about 100. And then you get into the Model 3, Model Y. Those are going to be 80s, I think, 70s, something like that. And the ID, what is ID4? I can't remember. The Volkswagen vehicles are, I think, 60 and 70.
Yeah.
I think 70s. And then, the new ID7 is going to be roughly that 70 something. So those are the smaller batteries. The Bolt's a 60. And I know I'm getting I'm just generalizing. I'm not trying to be specific on those.
Generous. So this is what they are. Yeah.
So we're talking, the Lightning and the R1T are in the 120s, 125. Usable battery pack in the R1T, 128. Usable battery pack in the Lightning. And then you're talking the Hummer EV, which is 100 kilowatts, roughly 100 kilowatts kilowatt hours more than that at 212 usable battery.
Such a huge battery.
So is that necessary? And, that's a hard thing to know 100%, but we're just going to talk about our what we think and
our experiences with EVs, and if you need that much battery and the efficiency and all that kind of stuff. So I think I started on the last podcast. So you start with your opinion first. Like, first off, do you think that they are necessary? Do you think we have to have vehicles out there with that big of a battery?
So in a sense of always having a big battery pack, necessary? Probably not. In certain use cases, they are nice to have, though. It's just like a gasoline vehicle. It's nice to have a very large, gas tank, but necessary, that's a hard thing for me to overcome and say completely yes to. And so there are a lot of benefits to it and a lot of wants that I think will be nice. But
I mean, you're also, when you're talking about the vehicles that have those big battery packs, the Lightning, the Rivian, the Hummer, they're really inefficient vehicles. So even though you have a bigger battery, you're not necessarily gaining a whole lot of range, so it's a little bit different in a gas tank type of way, but it's if you add on an extra auxiliary tank or whatever and make it bigger and get more miles or whatnot, which you could do if you continue to add more and more battery or whatever, but it's crazy how inefficient those vehicles are as well. But I guess when you're talking your big Ram 3500 or whatever, that's not a very efficient vehicle either. So
no, when you're alluding to the efficiency, you're comparing a car,
Yeah.
that has a smaller battery pack that's going to get a lot better efficiency than the current vehicles we have that are relatively inefficient. But that's the same side of, gas and diesel too. The bigger
Yeah.
they get, the less aerodynamic they are, and so they're less efficient. And so, I think to a certain extent, a bigger battery pack is necessary. There's, if you would have stuck a Bolt battery in the Hummer EV, I mean,
Go 5 miles.
yeah, if I can figure that out correctly, like it would have went roughly about 80 miles, but that's 70 miles, something like that. And, then it would have taken forever to charge up, just like the Bolts do. And so that's kind of the other side of it too. As you get into larger battery packs, you should be able to cram more energy into it a lot faster. And so then your efficiencies on road trips are going to become closer to a car, because a car has a smaller battery pack, so it can't charge quite as much. And I know some people are going to call me out on that with some of these batteries that are in Teslas. They can charge fairly quickly, but in general is what I'm talking about. You have a larger battery pack, you can put more kilowatts, you can have a higher rate of charge to get more energy in there. Since it's a more inefficient vehicle, that at least the charging should be more efficient.
Yeah. So, I think in general, I agree that, I don't know that there's a point where we say that they're necessary. But I think that right now, in our shift to moving to electric vehicles, is that right now they're probably currently more necessary than they will be in the future. Because for a couple reasons. One, the charging and such, the infrastructure is not on every corner. It's not as accessible as it would need to be. And in the future, that's going to improve and it's going to get better. And the other piece of that puzzle is that we love big vehicles here in the United States. We love our giant SUVs, our huge trucks. We like big vehicles. And to make the switch to EVs happen and to have people want to buy the EVs that they're putting out there, they're going to have to produce these big, massive vehicles so that people will make the transition. And then you have to have the big, giant battery packs in those vehicles just simply because they are so inefficient. I mean, so we've had the Hummer now for 2 weeks, a week, 2 weeks. How long has it been? 2 weeks. And I mean, gets what? 1 point. I mean, it's like we're towing in anything else.
1.4 to 1.
Yeah, 1 point.
Miles per kilowatt hour.
Yeah. And so
we're not being nice to it.
No, we just using the watts to freedom whenever we get the chance. But, so I think that right now, like, I think it's necessary to help with the transition and the switch. And also in the future, hopefully the technology will be there to help, either reduce the size of the battery through aerodynamics or whatever the case is, or we figure out some other way to make the car more efficient itself so we don't have to have as big of a battery pack. But, I think you just have to have these big giant vehicles, and with the technology that we have right now, that's going to equate to a big giant battery pack.
Yeah, currently they're not putting heat pumps in vehicles. Once again, I know some are, but not
everybody.
Ones, not the bigger vehicles, and so that requires a bigger battery pack because it's not as efficient. All these sorts of things. So you're probably right. In honestly, to get that transition, I do agree with that. That people in America love their giant vehicles. I mean, I hate to say it, I do too.
Yeah. So, I will not deny that I love a big giant F-350. Those things are such good looking trucks. We had a black one. Man, I loved that thing. Huge, giant. I love it.
So I think that, having the word necessary is hard for me to overcome because a lot of this stuff isn't necessary.
No.
It's not necessary for us to have an F-350. It's not necessary for us to have an RV.
No.
Like, it's not.
There's a lot of stuff. Yeah.
So these are all wants.
Yeah.
And so, along that lines, like, the fact that one of these battery packs, either in the R1T or the Ford Lightning, could produce 2 other vehicles, that's hard to overcome. But you need this transition in these larger vehicles too, so to get more people to adopt it. And then you look at the Hummer EV battery pack, and I mean, you can create, I think it's like 3.5 bolts.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. So depending upon the actual battery size, it goes anywhere from 220 kilowatt hours to 240. So if it's at 240, you could produce 4 bolts.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So they have to balance that, and I think that that's honestly why they're not building very many. That they say they have a long line of people waiting for it, and but it probably, honestly, they're probably losing money on these vehicles, and so.
But it's that wow factor, right?
It's
the get people to fall in love with it and say, well, that car's so cool. Maybe I'll look at this smaller EV that, fits my lifestyle, and I'll get that and I'll try it out and see if I like it because the Hummer EV is so cool, or because the Lightning is so cool, or whatever vehicle that you're looking at with these big giant battery packs. And, those vehicles do have a lot of cool features in it, and you can tell that they're trying to bring people in with the cool features. Things like the crab walk in the Hummer EV, or the Pro Power on board with the Ford Lightning. The Rivian being the fastest production pickup truck that, ever made. Like, you can tell that they're trying to bring people into to this realm with the cool features of those big battery pack vehicles. Yeah, all of it. Yeah. Well, the Hummer EV off-roading, the Rivian off-roading, the Lightning isn't really off-roading, but I mean, the big giant frunk, there's still a lot of cool features within the Lightning. So
I'll still go back to the Ford Lightning being I think the most necessary vehicle for electrification in my eyes.
Yeah.
So these other ones.
Well, all of the name brand pickup trucks because now we're getting into like the Silverado EV and stuff, like because everybody's got their brands that they're not everybody, but a lot of people have their brands they're loyal to, right? So these trucks coming out and being from the brands that people love, and being a light duty truck that people are driving around every day anyway, I think those are really important.
Yeah, they're important, but they're not quite the Lightning in my eyes. The Lightning is basically an F-150 that's electrified.
Yes.
And so it makes that truck way better than F-150. When you're looking at these other vehicles that are coming out, the Silverado, the Sierra, Denali, all those trucks on the Chevy GM side, they are different looking.
They are. They're more aerodynamic.
Yeah, and so they're more like a Rivian type of aerodynamic, and so I do think that there's going to be a little bit of a resistance just with that in my eyes.
Yeah,
the bed is a little bit smaller.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
Things so.
That's true.
It is going to have a giant battery pack in it.
Yeah,
So
still.
I think what we're seeing is close to that 200. I think it's like 180. I think it's going to be similar to the Hummer SUV that supposedly is being produced. At that 180 kilowatt hours. And so, maybe that's going to be the sweet spot of where it needs to be, so you can get up over 400 miles of range.
I think range is huge.
Yeah.
For people, I think, range. But to that point as well, when the technology improves and you can stop for, 5 or 10 minutes and get your battery charged up and then you're on the road and ready to go, especially if you have a smaller battery pack, do you think there'll be a shift back to smaller size batteries if we can charge those smaller batteries quickly? So then you make a short, quick stop and then you're on your way. Or do you think that people are going to continue to want to, even though in all reality, people can jump on their keyboards and be like, I go 600 miles without stopping.
Yeah.
But in reality, most people are not going that far without stopping, right? They're probably going maybe 200 miles, especially if you have kids, before you stop. So are people going to hang on to that, wanting to be able to go so many hundreds of miles without stopping? And so we're going to have to keep the bigger battery packs, or, do we get into the electric vehicles? We figure out, oh, hey, that's not so bad to stop every once in a while. And then we get to make the shift down to a smaller battery pack and stopping more often once the infrastructure's there.
I think that there's going to be all kinds.
Yeah.
We were willing to make the change, which we were definitely a family that wanted to go as far as possible, stay on the road as long as possible, get there as quickly as possible.
I mean, to the point where he would get frustrated with me when I would be like, sorry, I have to go to the bathroom. Like, he would be like, fine, he would always do it, but you could always tell he was annoyed that we were having to stop. So,
yeah, so this is what it is. It's okay to be frustrated.
No, I'm not. I'm saying, I'm just saying you really were that person that did not want to stop. And then once we made the switch, it was like, oh, hey, actually, it's kind of nice to take a break and get out of the car.
It's nice to take a break. And plus, I love the technology of electric vehicle.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit on road trips. And so, like I've said over and over, the average family only goes like 250 miles on one road trip a year, the average family. And so when that's the case, I can come up with an argument where, you don't need a giant battery
ever.
Pack, unless if you're towing or something like that, which there are, some people that do that, but what we're doing isn't, what everybody's doing too. So, I mean, how many people do we know, in our, dance community of our kids that actually have campers?
Yeah. So
2 or 3 out of 20 per more.
Compared to the average person, we are taking more road trips, significantly more road trips than the average family, towing significantly more than the average truck owner. So we're using our vehicles a lot, and they are bigger battery pack vehicles. Because of towing, because of towing, not necessarily the road trips. Yeah. I think we'd be fine with a smaller truck pack. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. And so we're not to the point where it's not necessary yet. You know what I mean? And hopefully in the future we will be. And, we're also big on the fact that there are going to be things that an electric vehicle will not be able to handle. Do I think that there will be able to be electric semis? Yes, I do. I think that that's going to be something that will be able to be electrified. But some of the heavier duty equipment and stuff like that, you're not going to get away from fully having, gas vehicles and stuff. So, because I think you start to get to the point where the battery packs have to be too big to make it worth it. And, maybe that changes in the future, but
it all comes down to energy density and a battery pack. If and they do have technology where they can cram. We had Corey Steuben on, who was obviously highly intelligent, and he was talking about that. But now the ones that are highly dense, or you can have a higher C rate, maybe more for performance, they're super expensive.
Yes, yeah,
and so. That type of chemistry and all that put together, like maybe the cost of that comes down. Maybe they figure out a cheaper material rather than titanium or titanate or whatever it is that cost a lot of money. Maybe either one, they find a ton of that, or, you know, they find a different material that does the same thing and it's lighter and it has a higher performance. So then we're able to put these batteries into regular vehicles. And then, yeah, it's going to, I think it'll make it easier to have these smaller batteries in smaller vehicles. They're going to weigh less. They're going to cause less issues like with weight on the road and stuff like that. Like, it's just going to make things a lot easier. But, you know, at the current stage, you know, you have a Hummer EV with a giant battery pack that weighs, I think it was Corey that said it was over 3,000 pounds. I think it was like 3,700 pounds.
Just the battery.
Yeah.
Just the battery.
So that's, you know, very significant.
Yeah.
When you're talking about that's as much as a lot of cars weigh.
The entire vehicle.
Yeah. So anyways, once that cost of those come down, you know, but you'll see this transition where the cost of the batteries come down, the current ones, because they get manufacturing ramped up, they get all their processes down, all that stuff. And then you're going to introduce some other ones, and then they're going to start to slowly work down. You know, I don't think you're going to, maybe you will, I hope we do, where you find this magical, you know, chemistry or battery that is cheap.
When we get to Mars.
You know, so, you know, that's it. I know people want to talk about, I want to switch a little bit, the Cybertruck.
Yeah.
Like, is it going to be necessary? How big is a battery pack going to be in the Cybertruck, or have to be, to obtain 500 plus miles?
Well, I think that they are aiming for, obviously, a more aerodynamic design with the Cybertruck. Like, it's still a big beast, but with that angle, they're taking it so it's not, you know, the Hummer or the F-150, the Lightning, or even the Rivian. They have some pretty flat faces.
Hummers.
Yeah, the Hummer's just all flat. So obviously with that angle, they're aiming for a more aerodynamic design so that it's doesn't have to have as big of a battery pack. But I still think that you're going to be, I mean, at least as big as the Rivian, or
to obtain 500.
Well, no, to obtain 500. I forget 500.
I mean,
like, I'm like the 300 miles again. But no, I mean, I think you're going to have a battery pack that's almost the size of the Hummers at least to get it. What do you think? I mean, you're better at that stuff.
I get it.
So
no, it'll have to be, as in my eyes, like, it'll have to be as big as the Hummer.
Yeah.
You know, when you're talking, you know, if it's 2 miles per kilowatt hour and it's a 200 kilowatt hour battery pack, that equals 400 miles.
Yeah.
So it's going to have to be more efficient than, you know, if it's 2.5, then you're talking 600 miles at a 200 kilowatt hour battery pack. So, you know, it's going to have to be in the efficiency of 2.25 or roughly something like that at 200 kilowatt hours.
I mean, but Tesla is good at making efficient vehicles. You know, that their vehicles are aerodynamic and efficient, and like they are really good at that. So I'll be interested to see like what they do with this big, massive Cybertruck, and how efficient they were able to make it.
Yeah, I am super excited about that.
Yeah.
So,
well, and the weight, the load capacity. I know that this is off topic off of the batteries, but to be able to be, I mean, it's a heavy duty truck if they come out with the specs that they said that they were going to, which, you know, as far as talking about big vehicles and big battery packs, I think that's a huge step forward for electrification, is having a heavy duty pickup truck, you know, because there's a lot of people that, well, it can't tow my 20,000 pound camper or whatever it is. And I can't remember what they said that the Cybertruck was going to be, but the payload capacity of it was what, like 3,000 pounds or something? So
Yeah, I think it was like a 14,000 pound towing
yeah,
capacity, if I remember that correctly.
yeah,
But you know, the whole payload capacity will be interesting. It depends if Tesla is going to be like every other car manufacturer and say the payload is way more than the actual payload on the vehicle, because you get these vehicles and you check the door jamb and it's a lot of times a lot lower. I mean, we had a Ram 2500 diesel truck, and what were they saying, that it was going to be like 3,500 pounds?
yeah. So we did all of the research on this thing, and I mean, I spent hours because we wanted to get a fifth wheel camper at the time, and all the spec sheets said that the lowest, even spec'd out, like we were looking at, was like 2,000 pounds or something like that. No, more like 2,500, I think. It was because when we got it, we were shocked. Yeah. And then so it was 1,800 pound payload capacity.
1,300.
Yeah, on a Ram 2,500.
1,300.
So mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And then we called Ram to talk to them about it, and they're like, we don't make a Ram 2,500 with that payload capacity. I'm like, well, it's sitting in my driveway. So you want to come tell me what's wrong with this picture? But I digress. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if, like, when they come out and then, you know, if they take, you know, did they add on the power tailgate? Not power tailgate. What's the word that I'm looking for? The power tonneau cover, when they were saying payload capacity. Are they going to have to minus that because those power tonneau covers weigh a lot to put in? So, you know, yeah, it will be interesting to see.
Yeah, because I think that's going to have to be a hard conversation too, with payload capacity in these large battery packs, because what they're rating these things at are, I mean, there's next to nothing for payload in a lot of these vehicles. And so, especially if you get them loaded up, like Katie was saying, with any sort of extras on it, it just adds weight. And by the time we even get our family and our family stuff in it, we're probably at standalone.
Yeah.
am kind of interested in the Hummer EV. I think the Hummer EV is maxed out payload before I even get in it.
Yeah. We want to take that one to the scale just for curiosity. But again, so we're going off, but it has to do with the big giant battery packs because it's the trucks and stuff. But do you think they're going to have to start coming out with like different rules and regulations for EVs as far as like payload capacities and towing capacities and what they can handle, just because of how different an EV handles going down the road? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that, you know, we can tow a 7,500 pound trailer down the road and not even feel it behind us, and you do that same thing. Yeah, you do that in the Lightning or the Rivian, you don't feel it behind you, but you do that same thing in a F-150 and you feel it back there a lot.
It's nerve-wracking.
And it's all because the vehicle is way more. It makes it more of a stable tow vehicle.
Thanks to the big giant battery.
Yeah, and it's low center of gravity, like down below. I even took the Hummer and just pulled the camper back to storage. It didn't do any tests or anything like that, but just pulled it back there, and you absolutely cannot feel anything.
Yeah.
Like, it was crazy. And, you know, should have put stabilizers on there, but I didn't. I just hooked it up because it's a couple miles down the road. And, I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And it was blowing pretty good. And, like, I just, you know, and it's because it weighs even 2,000 more pounds than the R1T or the Lightning.
Yeah.
And so, like,
it weighs more than the camper itself, which is a huge, I think, for stability wise, is a big factor in feeling secure going down the road. And we saw that switch when we switched to an F350. We were like, oh, this is so much better. And it was not anything other than the fact that it just weighed more than our lighter vehicles, like our, you know, F-150 that we had, or we've towed with an Escalade, we've towed with an F-150, we've towed with a excursion we've towed with a Ram 2500. We've towed with a lot of different vehicles. And I can't even remember them all. the Model X, the Rivian, the Lightning, the R1S.
Soon the Hummer.
Yeah. So, and so ever since we started towing, I think I had an inkling when we started towing with the Model X that there was something different about the EVs. But I think what I really realized that I think there's going to have to be a different set of rules for EVs, or like we're going to have to come up with some, maybe not a different set of rules, but like okay, here's the baseline, but an EV can, blah, 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 if they have proper brakes and that type of a thing. But when we towed with the Rivian for the first time, I think that's when I really was like, this is insane how stable this is, because it's comical. The size of the Rivian compared to our 30-foot Airstream is comical, right? Like it does not look like it should be able to tow it, but yet it tows it better than any other vehicle that we've ever had. So it's like, and that's when I started to think, and I do think it has to do with the batteries. And so maybe they have to beef up the suspension to up the payload capacities, but then I think that they can tow,
It'll have to be tires, suspension.
Yeah, all of that stuff. So. When I say suspension, I'm grouping tires into it. Which, the one other thing that I wanted to say just slipped my mind as I said the other thing that I wanted to say. So I'm sure it'll come back to me and I'll rudely interrupt you when I remember what it was. But I think that it's such a different ball game. Like, and so that is an argument for the bigger battery packs, right? Like to be able to tow farther, the stability of the vehicle when you have that in there.
Charging infrastructure.
Yeah, the current charging infrastructure.
Public charging. Tesla people, sorry. We know yours is superior.
We know. We've been there. We miss it, okay?
It's been funny with the Hummer. It totally brings out the Tesla fan boys,
it does.
Girls, and starts hating on it. And
yeah.
I'm trying to still dial in like what it is that they don't like about it.
It's inefficient. It's not, it's not saving the earth because it's just massively inefficient. I think that's what it is. And
but they haven't said that.
No. Well, I've heard it a couple times, like not to us, but like when I watched seen other stuff on the Hummer EV.
Yeah, I don't think it's safe.
No.
I don't think the Cybertruck will save the earth. No. To be honest.
Let's be honest, is any of it really saving the earth? No. Like better air quality. Yeah. That's the biggest thing that's happening right now. Again,
in the current state. Let's go back to that.
Yeah.
Saving the earth in the current state.
Yes.
Because we're not running on renewables.
No.
We haven't figured out that technology 100%.
Batteries are not being recycled as much as they need to be. Like all that stuff.
We're unfortunately, having to destroy some parts of the earth to get the material for these batteries.
Yeah.
But we're doing the same thing with oil and gas too. We're just hoping that, we can get to the point where we're recycling batteries and able to reuse them more efficiently than we can with gas and diesel vehicles, and then also go to renewable energy where, we're using what's already provided to us, wind, solar, those sorts of things. So,
yeah.
So, anyways, I didn't mean to
go down that rabbit hole. That's a whole nother podcast.
Somebody's gonna call us out.
No, they will. And yeah.
So that it'll be interesting the longer that we own the Hummer to see what the Tesla fanboys and girls don't like about it. And the funny thing is like, we love all EVs. Like we would love to have a Tesla that can tow our 30-foot Airstream.
Yeah.
I mean, we thought about like doing it Andy style.
Yeah.
Where we get a Model S.
Go back and watch that. I think it's podcast number 5, or listen to that. Podcast number 5.
Where he tows a similar Airstream with his Model S.
Yeah.
And that would be cool. But, we're also trying the current vehicles that are on the market, bringing you information. So then, you can do with it whatever you want with it. And so I think that, when the Cybertruck comes out, like, I would love to get one.
We're pretty low on the list, though, so it's just gonna be the thing. And I think that the biggest piece of the puzzle is that we have to have a variety of EVs, because not everybody likes the same stuff, right? And the Rivian is still the R1T, I should say, because I gotta remember we got 2. The R1T is still my favorite, quite possibly my favorite vehicle that we've ever owned. Probably not the same story for Steve, but for me, I love the speed. I love the off-road, the adventure piece of it. Like, it does feel like it's ready for you to go on an adventure at any point. I love all of that about it. But as it sits right now, and we haven't lived with it for very long, so maybe it's still the honeymoon phase, but the Hummer may be my second favorite vehicle we've ever owned, because I'm a summer girl, right? I love driving with the windows down, and to be able to take the sky panels, I call them the right thing. Did you catch that?
I was calling T-tops.
To be able to take the sky panels off, roll that back window down, let the sun get on me, like drive around on warm summer nights. I think I'm going to be in love with that truck over the summer.
And be hard to beat.
Yeah. I'm also a big vehicle person. I love big vehicles. I mean, from the first chance I had, I got a little Ford Escape when I got my first real job, so that I could get just a little bit bigger vehicle than the little, cars that I had been driving around. And then from there, I went up to a Yukon, and then it was we did a minivan and some things that we don't want to talk about in life. But then it was a, Escalade XL, that's not what they call it, but the, extended Escalade.
Yes.
ESV, there you go. I love a big vehicle. So, and so we have to have those options out there for people that love big vehicles, that love something different, because not everybody is going to love a Tesla. I really did like our Model X as well, but you have to have different things. All EVs can't be Teslas if we're going to, make the switch.
Yeah. So let's go to the charging infrastructure. We talked about how you necessarily, you do need bigger battery packs with the public charging. Do you think that Teslas need bigger battery packs like the Cybertruck that potentially is going to have, they say it's going to have over 500 miles.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's going to need to be 180 to 220 kilowatt hour battery pack. So it's going to need to be pretty large. Does Tesla need that, since their infrastructure is pretty good? They're building another one here in Lincoln, Nebraska, version 3. We go to the one up north and there's barely anybody there. I'm like, why are we building another one?
We've contemplated doing a series of shorts on just every time we drive by the Tesla supercharger to document that there is no one there whenever we go. So that's how.
Building another.
And they're building another one.
By Runza. So if you go to that.
Oh, yeah.
Runza. That's a Nebraska thing.
You do. Do not be scared by the name. I had a roommate in college that was always like, I am never going to eat at Runza. Are you kidding me? No, go eat at Runza. It's delicious. Get the frings, their fries and onion rings, and get the French onion dip to dip them in. Yeah. There's our 2 cents. And then choose whatever else from the menu. Yeah. Their go-to thing is their Runza sandwiches that are enclosed little things, fresh baked bread that goes around. It's so good. But I digress. So the Tesla network is better.
Way better.
But there are still places where there's big gaps. So if you want to fill those gaps for a Tesla, and I'm getting remote here. Like I'm talking like going to Alaska, that type of a thing. But there are still gaps where you do need more range to make those spots, especially if you're going to be towing. And, the Cybertruck can do that. So,
But is it necessary too?
Well, you're asking an RVer that wants to go to Alaska. So yes, it's necessary.
Okay.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that they've
Right now.
somewhat proved it.
Yeah.
That it isn't as necessary because they have smaller battery pack cars that road trip perfectly fine.
Yeah.
You just maybe have to stop a little more often. It goes back to what you were talking about, where you get to this point where it's the charging infrastructure works so well and you're able to charge so fast that you only have to stop a certain amount of times for a certain amount of time. And so I struggle with that. It's probably not necessary even if you are towing.
Like current day, you still think,
because
so us poor suckers just have to stop and charge at a campground or whatever if we get a stretch that we can't make it.
Poor suckers.
Towing, so like if
you had a Tesla, you could get to most places. I understand
towing.
Alaska, yes, I understand Alaska is very rough, but I think that that's not necessary. How many people go to Alaska? It's all retired people, and they ain't buying EVs.
Somebody please correct him. Just tell us you're a retired person with an EV. No, okay, it's probably not necessary. Not
because it's a small group of people that RV on a tow with an electric vehicle, which we love those people because that's us. But it's not necessary if you're not towing at all.
No, not if you're not towing. But,
And it's an even smaller group that wants to go to Alaska. So, what?
Because very American of me, but I want it to work for me. So then therefore it's necessary.
Okay. This word necessary is bugging me.
I know. He does not like the word necessary. But again, I'm thinking like adoption wise and getting the masses to do this, getting the masses to move to EVs, which we're already like starting to see. I just saw Inside EVs, I believe it was, posted an article that 4 out of 10 drivers are considering an EV for their next electric vehicle. That's a huge number. That's a big switch. So, it's I'm thinking in terms of like necessary for adoption, necessary for current the way it's currently set, even with the Tesla charging network. If you're towing, like if you're doing worst case scenario, right? Like I think that they're still necessary. I don't think they will be necessary in the future. Where that point comes, I don't know, but I think that it, eventually will not be necessary. But right now, as it sits today, I think it is.
So if we had a Cybertruck that had let's say it's 125 kilowatt hour battery pack. Let's say it's same efficiency as the R1T, but we could charge on the Tesla charging network. And the nice thing about Teslas are you can also charge on the public.
You can.
So, would you feel like there's very many places besides Alaska, which we have mapped it out, you can do it. You do have to stop at some campgrounds. But besides Alaska, do you feel like there's very many places that we couldn't go?
No.
We go to South Dakota like we want to.
Yeah.
Only public charging you can't.
No.
With R1T.
What about Wyoming?
Wyoming, they have Tesla superchargers. We can make it to that Airstream rally super easy.
So, excuse me, Elon, we're going to need to borrow a Cybertruck around June.
Yeah. When they produce them, which is, that's the only comeback when somebody's like, oh, the Hummer EV's not going to be as great as the Cybertruck. Well, yeah,
It's on the road.
paper.
It's in my garage.
Or
So
the R1T or the Lightning, which is a valid response.
It
It's like, okay, yeah, great. You're talking about this vehicle that's supposedly going to come out. And I think it is. Like, don't get me wrong.
I think they're getting close. Like
Yeah.
looking at the pictures and stuff.
Yeah. My assumption is it's going to be very little this year.
Oh yeah, no.
I hope to. Like, I would love it. And I hope that somebody reaches out to us, like, especially with the Hummer EV, so we could do some comparisons. That would be so awesome. Tug
Yeah.
of war.
Tug of war. Yeah, if you're one of the first people to get a Cybertruck, you got to call us up
So,
because we need to do some things with that. But it's. I think that's it. It's just such a hard question to answer, though, because there's so many factors that go into it. When we're talking about, if we're talking about the environment and all of these things, like, no, it's not necessary. But again, for the adoption and all of that piece, I do think that we have to have them to push past this point of the EV switchover.
yeah, I agree with that.
So,
But I still don't like this word necessary.
okay, well,
That should be the title. Steve hates the word necessary.
yeah, Steve hates the word necessary.
Because I know how I grew up. There was a lot of only necessary stuff in my
Yes,
life.
yes.
And, that was very bare minimum. And
Yeah.
my life currently is a lot of unnecessary stuff.
Yes.
And I love my life.
So needs versus wants types of a thing. So we don't need a bigger battery pack. We want a bigger battery pack to make it easier to do the things. So that's where you're hung up on the word necessary.
Because, like, do you necessarily have to get there an hour earlier?
No.
No. There's most of the time you don't have to.
No.
Like, I understand. Maybe sometimes there are, but, why you towing a camper if you got to get there an hour earlier? So,
True. True.
So, like, anyways, that's where my mind goes.
Yeah.
Do I, necessarily have to, eat steak? No. I grew up like my parents would get a steak and I would eat and my family would eat hamburger. That was a nice meal for my family.
Yes.
So, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like-
I know.
these are not necessary.
It's not necessary. But what is necessary is for you to go find this podcast on Spotify, iTunes, wherever it's at, and follow us, subscribe, whatever the button says in your podcast app that you use. Do that. Go over and leave us a comment on the podcasts as well, through Spotify, this, that, or the other thing, wherever you can leave comments, reviews, that type of a thing for the podcast, because we would love for more people to start seeing this in the podcast realm. Thank you to everybody that watches it on YouTube.
Yes, thank you.
We love that you guys jump on and watch it, but we also want to grow it in that realm as well so that we can reach more people and help them with their transition to EVs, or give them the courage to take off and go tow in their camper this summer, or tow their camper with their EVs this summer. So be sure to do all that stuff and catch us back here next week.
Yep. Comment necessary down below. See you guys.
Bye, guys. Thanks for listening. Find all of our show notes at allelectricfamily.com/allelectricconversations. Be sure to connect with us on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at All Electric Family. Find us on Twitter as All Electric Fam. You can find our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed this story, please be sure to share it and hit that subscribe button. Leave a review and help inspire others to hit the road. Until next time, stay charged.